Racial unity is a gospel issue because it's mired and anchored in the Great Commission. It's not a strategy. It's not something nice that we should do. It is mired and anchored in the Great Commission. It's anchored in the church. It's anchored in what God is doing in the world. We do not have the privilege of being one-dimensional ethnically. That the very nature of what we're all about is to reach out beyond who we are and to reach the world, not just geographically, but it's the peoples in the world. So I think at the very beginning is changing the way we think about the gospel, changing the way we think about how the gospel impacts the world, and changing our behavior to reflect the mandate that we have. The greatest threat to racial unity is not a heavy issue. We all know what it is. It's hyper-individualism, selfishness, and sin. You know, we love ourselves, and our default mode is to stay within our own comfort zone, stay one-dimensional about who we are. As evangelicals, as Christians, we continue to answer questions nobody's asking anymore. We are typically 15 years behind the times in terms of where people really are. And I think we need to step up our game and really begin to wrestle prophetically with the truth of God's word and where society's really at, and what is the hope of the gospel, and how do we give answers that leads the culture to where it needs to be, rather than being so concerned about being accepted by society and accepted by the culture that we have nothing to say. I can't put words around. I mean, I'm actually sitting here being interviewed. Moody Press has published a number of my books. And frankly, you have to give a nod to MLK. The environment was set for that to take place. His impact is enormous, enormous, beyond human comprehension. I'm staying in a hotel that I couldn't have stayed in had it not been for Dr. King. I live in a neighborhood, I own a house in a community that I could not have stayed in if it were not for Dr. King. My kids have gone to undergraduate and graduate schools that they would not have been allowed to attend had it not been for Dr. King. I mean, his impact is beyond comprehension. God in his providence used that man to change the course of history in this nation. And so, you know, I think I pastor a church that is predominantly white in the South. That would have never happened had it not been for Dr. King. To see the next generation of leaders. I've got two sons who are pastoring multi-ethnic churches, and I happen to pastor a multi-ethnic church, and to see their colleagues and guys like Charlie Dates and Eric Mason and other younger guys who are doing this, and that gives me hope. To Hottie Lewis, and there are names of people now, and they're not these little isolated islands. There is a new normal that is being created now. And I think that that's going to be the conscience of the future. So I look into the next 50 years, and I'm praying by God's grace that this momentum will continue. Yeah. His sovereignty, that God is sovereign. He's not taking Malox over our predicament. He's not up in heaven, trying to put together some focus group to figure out what's going on. He's not wringing his hands. He's not. God is in control, and he's on his throne, and he knows what he's doing. And so our response has got to be to surrender to who he is and courageously do his will, because he is sovereign. Well, one of the problems that's taken place in recent years has been the fact that many African American Christians have become tragically and terribly disappointed with the white evangelical branch of Christianity. We feel as if there's been the accommodation of righteousness and justice, and I might even say holiness, for endorsing somebody or political figures or groups of people that would check the box on certain issues, but those same people totally disregard the concerns and issues of minorities. And so again, it's a selective denunciation of sin, and to many African Americans, they smell that as blatant hypocrisy. And it does not set well. And that's the reason why many of these African Americans who in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s that found their way into some of these predominantly white congregations and mega churches, they're leaving by droves right now because of the inability to speak up comprehensively concerning justice and righteousness. And we feel as if there's been a trade-off, that for access to power, what has been traded off, that we've gotten access to power, but let's be quiet about these other issues because they're not part of our agenda. And so many minorities feel left in the wind, hanging out there. And so many feel as if, okay, we paid the price by moving toward our brothers to identify with you because we believe that you are comprehensive in your understanding of justice and righteousness and fairness, only to discover that you wouldn't fight for us. We fought for you. What we need to do is to get back to biblical Christianity. And it's not that difficult. We need to get back to just bare bones biblical Christianity. Listen, strategy, gifts, talents, and abilities, quite frankly, at this stage in my life, they're important, but they tend to be overrated. What is terribly and tragically underrated is obedience and faithfulness. To pay the price to be comprehensively obedient and consistent about what I believe is the pathway to moral spiritual integrity and impact.